A very good morning, everyone, and a very warm welcome to our Executive Dialogue 4, where we'll be talking about transforming the experience of Indian energy consumers through digital technology. Welcome to Feed 2022, which is organized by an Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy. So I'll very quickly tell all of you that the last 10 minutes of this session are going to host a Q&A. The audience is requested to keep posting their questions in the Q&A box that is on the right sides of your screen. We'll try and answer as many questions as our time permits. So without much ado, I'm going to now invite our first speaker, that is also our expert speak for the day, Mr. Manish Pant. He's the zone president for East Asia and Japan at Schneider Electric based in Singapore. He is responsible for the commercial operations across 14 markets, including Southeast Asia, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, and Mongolia, where he is driving business performance and transformation. Manish has been with Schneider Electric for more than 23 years, which is well a very rich experience to bring with you, sir. And he's worked for both operations and strategic roles. A very warm welcome over to you, Mr. Pant.
Thank you, Sa, and great to be here in this event this afternoon. This morning, I'm dialing in from Singapore. I've been seeing AEEE doing some great work under the leadership of Dr. Satish Kumar. It's a privilege to be here with this august audience and talk about transforming the experience of Indian energy consumers through digital technologies. I would say that my role right now is to share a little bit of global context, which hopefully will set the stage and bring more discussions linked to Indian energy consumers later on in the panel. I'm here from Schneider Electric, and at Schneider Electric, our purpose is to empower all to make the most of our energy, bringing progress and sustainability for all, which is what we call as life is on. And our mission is to be the digital partner for sustainability and efficiency for our customers. Just to set the stage, today climate change is the biggest issue of our time, and clearly energy is 80% of the carbon dioxide emissions that we are seeing today, linked to both production and consumption of energy. The way we use today energy is inefficient and clearly something that we have to be working on. And while we saw the emissions fall due to COVID in the past years, mostly because of COVID, we would probably see a rebound unless we do something more about it. We are at a very critical juncture in a sense that we have to flatten the curve, a concept that we are now all familiar with, thanks to what we have seen and we have overcome together in this pandemic. We are living in an age of fire, and since we have been harnessing its power, it has fueled massive industrialization as well as prosperity and population growth. But it has come at a cost, and the cost is the growth of emissions. We have to act now, and clearly, if we have to get to this 1.5 degree managing the temperature rise, we need to act on it right now. And we have to ensure that our actions in this decade, we are able to halve it so that we can reach the goal of carbon neutrality by 2050. Now, how to do that? I would say that it is something that what we call as electricity 4.0, which is the fuel for this new electric world, which is going to be more sustainable and also more efficient. This is a combination of electric, which is making energy green, and this is a way to control the emissions that are there. And also, it is much more efficient than any other source of energy. So it's the best vector for decarbonization of energy. And the second is digital, and this is what builds a smart future. It is what is making the invisible visible and driving efficiency and eliminating energy waste. We like to see both electric and digital go together, and that's how we are able to ensure that we are paving the way for this carbon reduction as well as sustainability in the future. Now, this is possible because today consumers are turning to prosumers and they will participate in this energy value chain. Prosumers, they are now producing thanks to the decentralized generation, which is now possible and also gaining momentum coupled with storage. Of course, prosumers are consuming, but also more importantly, they are able to control their energy and making efficiency as a key value. Because once you are able to control your energy, thanks to all the digital technologies that are available today, and because the main form of energy is electricity, that becomes a very key value. And then on top of that, it is also giving the flexibility to the consumers to participate and give flexibility to the electrical utility as well. Demand response is getting pervasive, and every consumer, whether it is residential or CIB, is now able to participate and play a very active role in it. Today, we have the hardwares and the software that is available and is now making sure that active energy management is possible and is turning consumers into prosumers. I will take it forward by giving some examples in residential and CIB space. The first one is in the residential space, where homes are transitioning to a different future that is, again, all digital and also all electric. More and more energy is being used in form of electricity, and this is happening the way we are moving into cooking, or even in the space of transport, which is probably going to be used a lot at home because we'll be charging our electric vehicles at home in the future. The availability of a decentralized and a decarbonized grid due to rooftop and battery system, which is now available. In fact, in India, with inverters that have been prevalent for a long period of time, I would say we are already ahead in terms of distributed storage that is available in the country. Schneider Electric operates in this space with Luminous, which is one of the brands of inverters and batteries as well as solar, and we are working more and more to see how we could ensure that every residential customer is able to participate in this future, in this home of the future. Some of the studies that we did in the past have estimated that over 10 gigawatt of capacity can become available if we actually kick in these inverters that are available in India. On top of that decarbonization and the decentralized generation and storage, home automation together with the home energy management systems that are also getting very prevalent and especially starting in some of the other markets that we have seen outside, which will help consumers manage demand, bring down the electricity spend as well as carbon emissions substantially. I would like to share one example from KB Homes, which is one of the leading developers of home in the United States. And they have been using a full grid to plug solution coming from Schneider Electric and working with several partners, because we believe in an open ecosystem which is able to deliver this home of the future. The second example I would like to give is in the CIB space, which is a building in France that we have just built for Schneider Electric. And this is a carbon and energy neutral, I would say even energy positive building. And this has been made possible, as you can see here, through a lot of decentralized generation that we are doing in the building. But at the same time, it is through the use of sensors, and we are measuring 60,000 data points every 10 minutes so that it is able to ensure that the real-time occupancy adjusted energy consumption is carried on. And this element is made possible right from the stage of construction using BIM modeling and energy simulation. So these kind of technologies are available today, and which is what we can bring and ensure we are able to scale up and deploy in different parts of the world. Another example from Australia is around a microgrid solution, which is in the southern Australian produce market, where a 2.5 megawatt microgrid is making the full market self-reliant, autonomous, as well as is able to feed the excess energy back to the grid. And all this is made possible and managed in a dynamic way through the EcoStructure power solution from Schneider Electric. And those solutions are available today in the world. So I would conclude by saying that here are the three examples that have been shown, and there are many more that are now available that would help the prosumer to evolve, and digital technologies will drive the way, coupled with electricity 4.0, to take us on this path of carbon reduction targets for this decade. I will stop here and pass the ball back for a discussion in the panel just after. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was indeed very nice to be listening to you here. So very quickly, I'm going to move on to the next segment now, and that is going to be a moderated discussion. So first, may I please invite Dr. Rahul Tongia, who will be the moderator for the entire session today. He's the Senior Fellow at the Center for Social and Economic Progress, abbreviated as CSEP, and a non-resident Senior Fellow at Brookings. He's also the founding advisor of ISGF and serves as an adjunct professor at Carnegie Mellon University. He has seeded and led the design and implementation of a number of projects spanning networking, energy, RE, education, and he has also helped set up much of the smart grid space in India. It's a pleasure to have you amongst us, sir. The next panelist for this session will be Mr. Umesh Putoria, who is the founder and CEO of Exempla, an asset performance management analytics software for facilities. Umesh has 12 plus years of experience at the intersection of energy operations and data. He's also a member of the Alliance for an Energy Efficient Economy and a member of the former FEL 100-member World Energy Council. Welcome, sir. Next, I'd like to invite Professor Vishal Garg, who is the professor and head of the Center for IT in Building Science at IIIT Hyderabad. His current research interests are in the area of smart energy homes, building energy simulation, and cool roofs. He was also the founding president of the Indian chapter of the International Building Performance Simulation Association, that is IBSA. Welcome, sir. Next, may I call on stage Dr. Viraj Srivastav, who is an innovator, developer, and a researcher in data analytics and its applications to the industrial domain with 12 years of professional experience. He's currently the principal data scientist at the Connectic Plant Honeywell Technology Solutions Lab. Some prominent examples of his work are not limited to analysis of plant operation events, digital twins to forecast performance, analysis of control system networks, and analysis of catalyst performance. Welcome, sir. Lastly, I'd like to invite Mr. Gaurav Burman, who is the APAC president of 75F Smart Innovations Limited. He has handled a diverse portfolio in his career, including subjects like project management, alliances, channel sales, and enterprise sales. Prior to marketing, Gaurav spent 20 years of his life in sales and working with companies like PCL, IBP, L&T, APC, and Schneider Electric. He was recently recognized as one of the 50 most talented CMOs in India in 2013, and later as one of the 100 most talented CMOs in the world by a US-based CMO council. It's a pleasure to have such a diverse panel with us today. I'm going to hand over the stage to you, Mr. Tongia, from here. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And it's my pleasure to be here on this very important topic. And before I dig into sort of some opening remarks, I just wanted to let the audience know that there is a poll running digitally in parallel. And so everyone is encouraged to fill those out as well. Let's just jump in. Hopefully, I'm clear, audible. It- am I? So, digital is an enabler that we're going to talk about. We heard Mr. Soni in the previous session talk about that the grid is changing and digital and demand response, smart grids will be critical. But let's understand what it really means. I'm going to ignore and bypass this cliche data is the new oil, which has its own messes because then you're dealing with privacy issues and so forth. But to exemplify what I mean by digital is an enabler, if you remember back in 2007 to 2009, Europe instituted a 20-20-20 energy mandate or targets, which was by 2020 you would have 20% renewable energy, 20% efficiency improvement, etc., and 25% intensity improvement. Now, they did not say consumers must have smart meters. But yet, to achieve those levels of energy efficiency, you needed smarts. So smarts really becomes how you achieve greenness, how you achieve efficiency, how you achieve very high renewables. You look at India's targets, they are amongst the most ambitious in the world. By 2030, India wants 450 gigawatts of RE, which is enormous because in the old grid, what used to be that demand varied and you would vary the supply and you would have firm supply to match at all times. But now with RE, your supply itself can be variable. Manish Pant talked about this issue of prosumers, producers, consumers. Well, if you have rooftop solar, then it at one extreme can be a very dumb application because it's going to feed in middle of the day. If your house is empty, you're not going to consume that power. It'll be fed into the grid. The most efficient use would be if you actually consume it and you want to match your demand to supply. So that's what the future grid needs to deal with. It's not kilowatt hours that you want to save necessarily, but it's energy at the right time and the right place. That's a fundamental shift in how we think about renewables. The Association of Home Appliance Manufacturer, AHAM, they had a wonderful white paper, you can find it on the web, where they talked about the three things you need to make digital work for consumers and end users. The first, they said it has to be easy, it has to be plug and play, it has to be interoperable, meaning it shouldn't be complex. I think many of us here in the audience become help desk for our family when it comes to things technical. So if that's the complexity in connecting a Wi-Fi router, imagine what it is to get a smart home running. And it should not be lock-in. So you shouldn't need a Samsung phone to control a Samsung fridge or a Samsung AC. Second, they said you need an incentive. So let's assume intuitively people understand congestion, peak, off peak. Why should I shift my demand to another time period if there is no financial benefit or other incentive for me to do so? So, time of day pricing is something that's missing as an example. The third thing they talked about was control, which was consumers want to retain control. Just because there's a grid that has a peak at a certain time, I may be given an incentive to shift my load. But if I want hot water at a particular time, I want hot water at a particular time. No one wants the utility to be controlling their fridge. And more importantly, maybe a few handful do, but most people don't. The flip side is the utility does not want to be liable for anything that goes wrong with your appliances. So they want to stay out of your home at a direct control level, except in niche bulk cases with specialized contracts made available for it. So in the computer science world, there's a phrase made called sense, think, act. These are the steps needed to get uh, improved outcomes. Sensing is easy. Well, not easy, but it's easier now than ever before. Think is the analytics. Now, whether you do that in the cloud or locally is a whole separate architectural question on device, on network, or backend. The hardest challenge is really what do I do with information? Information is becoming cheaper and cheaper. Communications is getting cheaper. Mobiles are ubiquitous. Many homes have Wi Fi, or at least enough homes can run a network if needed. But what do you do with that information? How do I turn on and off a load? So, if I could ask the organizers to share one graphic, this is I have a smart meter and a safety device put after the regular meter. My discom doesn't give it, this is behind the meter. And this is today, three phases. showing the load in kilowatts. Blue, you notice, is zero. The quote unquote lighting circuit of my house, which is the regular one, is in yellow. And that's been going steady up a little bit, not too high, less than 0.75 kilowatt at its peak so far today. And the red one is a power circuit, which you can note approach 2 kilowatts for a half hour time block. No points for guessing what that load was. So this is 7.5 minute readings. It's a geyser. So now the question is, let's assume I know when solar is high, when the grid is at peak. Maybe I even have pricing signals. Do I have a smart geyser that could preheat? So now we need to link into the um, back end, or as well as even the manufacturing, which means, can my geyser, for example, if I heat it the day before, which is when solar runs, will it stay warm till the next morning? We don't know these questions yet. So the answer you get for saving rupees may not match the answer you get for saving kilowatt hours, which may not match the answer for saving tons of CO2. What we need is an alignment of all three. So from an end consumer perspective, you know, this is one of those smart devices for a smart home. I won't show the brand, sorry. And what do consumers do with it? They don't really save energy with it. They get entertainment. They get a little bit of perhaps home automation. Some places run their curtains or lighting, I don't know. But that's for convenience typically. So we're still not quite there yet. And the policy question is, how much scope for energy saving do I have? How much scope for energy shifting do I have? And then what are the tools, whether it's through hardware that you provide, software analytics, that you folks are experts in. So I'll end with a couple of rhetorical questions on just trying to understand what's real, what's hype and BS, and what's coming soon. Maybe not there today, but very soon. So this is the same thing for my house over a week. You can notice the three phases. So I can see that different geysers, red and blue, turn on. One geyser is used much more than the other. So I have to have a word with my children about very long baths. The showers don't help the environment. You can close the slides. So in the closing sort of thought to open, what's the holding it back? Is it the lack of use cases? People haven't figured out what to do with it. Is it price points? So then, things are getting cheaper. We'll get there soon. Is it complexity? I talked about the challenges of integrating Wi-Fi. Now imagine I need a geyser to learn and connect to my Wi-Fi. And then I realize I've had to change my password in my home Wi-Fi. Now what? Is it uncertainty? Because technology is moving, evolving very rapidly. So people are afraid of lock-ins. People don't know which technologies or platforms to choose. And then the last one is fear of security, privacy. Where's my data going? Who controls it? That third point in AHAM. So hopefully I've given some food for thought, and request everyone to share rather brief, couple of minutes maximum opening remarks, whether it's on these questions or what you think is important. Then we can really get into an interactive discussion on these points. So I'll mix up the order just a little bit. Gaurav, if you could very briefly.
Certainly. Thank you, Rahul. Um, you made three points. I mean, you made lots of points, but the three for me that really stood out were when you talked about AHAM briefly, and you said that customers want something that's easy. It should not be lock-in. There should be incentives, and customers want control. So I'll sort of take off on that and sort of build on those points. Um, to my mind, uh, there are three reasons really. Number one, and these are both in terms of preventing wider adoption as well as the areas in which we need to work to ensure that greater adoption is achieved. So number one, conformity is not in the Indian DNA. Right? We thrive on heterogeneity and are constantly trying to customize the status quo. It's all about what's contained in the dashboards right now. More and more people are asking the question, what does it do for me, and not just getting in the technology or the meter or the sensor for the sake of it. So it's much more outcome focused, and customers need dashboards and reporting that is highly customized today, not the one size fits all. And I think we from the industry have been guilty of trying to push something standardized down their throats for a very long period of time. Now, we at 75F are in the business of manufacturing sensors, controllers, the complete IBMS that goes with it. And we strive to make things as customizable as possible. I mean, recently there was a client who wanted the exact energy consumption. They were a co-working company. So they wanted the exact energy consumption for every occupant. And some of these occupants, just occupied a few desks, not an entire floor or, half a floor or whatever. They wanted each and every consumer to be tracked. They wanted to know when exactly they were exceeding their permissible limit that had been provided to them, and they wanted this in real time, right? So with a fair amount of work between the lines, this is something that we were able to achieve, and they put in locks and ways by which the energy consumption did not exceed the permissible limit, so that energy hogs could be controlled in the building. That's one example. The second one was in these days of COVID. Um, you have a lot of variables in there, variable occupancy in the buildings, in addition to the usual ones of the differential operating hours of HVAC systems and what have you. So in this kind of an environment, it gets very difficult to actually figure out how you are saving or how much you're saving, because with ambient temperatures and operating hours and occupancies varying all over the place depending on whether a city has had a local outbreak or not. So to cut a long story short, we were able to come up with a multivariate regression analysis that actually took all these into account and came up with a predicted energy consumption on the basis of the occupancy, the operating hours, and what have you. And against that, when the actuals were compared, the client could actually come up with an actual savings that were being achieved in this highly variable kind of operating scenario. So customization and giving clients something that is very suitable to their requirements is key. That's point number one. Point number two, what prevents the wider adoption is really that the running of the sequences is very complex for the buildings that we have and the systems that we have in place today. And for a country like India, we just don't have the kind of trained manpower that is available to run these. They're very complex to set up and operate. It takes months on the site. And then after that, if the guy who was actually trained on it goes to join another company, God help you, because he takes a whole lot of tribal knowledge with him. So I mean, if you look at what are the things that really get adopted readily, I mean, look at smartphones today. If it isn't up and running in 5 minutes, you're probably yelling blue murder, right? So the onus is on us as technology solutions providers to come up with systems that are very easy to set up and play. I mean, literally, your building should be so easy to run that a child could set it up, or else maybe a multi-facility person who also manages the electricity and also manages the HVAC systems should be able to run it. And the only way to do that, I mean, it's a pipe dream to think that we're going to be able to train people up to run these increasingly complex systems. No, we just have to make the systems very plug and play. So, for example, depending on the kind of system that you're setting up, there should just be a drop down menu, and you choose the relevant system. You choose whether you want to run it in economy mode or whatever, save that sequence, and bam, it should be ready to run. And I think this is an area in which we're moving, but a lot of work needs to be done so that operators can pick and choose, plug and play. And I think this will be a path towards adoption of digital technologies. And last of all, and this is a fairly obvious one, and Rahul, you also touched upon this, that unless digital technologies are a lot cheaper, and by a lot cheaper, I'm talking at least 30, 40, 50% cheaper, it is not going to be disruptive. It's not going to be an innovation. And there are numerous ways in which we need to innovate to get costs down. There's no point adding more and more features and then, trying to convince customers that you get more bang for the buck. You just have to innovate, especially in Asia, especially in India, to get the price down. Multiple sensors being fitted onto a single piece of hardware, integrating sensors and controllers, having much more wireless components so that the cabling and all is drastically reduced, moving storage to the cloud so you get virtually unlimited storage. I mean, there are the possibilities are endless. But I think around these, if we're able to innovate as an industry, then it will become mainstream.
Thank you, Gaurav. Lots of points you raised. This issue of commodity heterogeneity we'll come back to, because what do people need? Second, you talk about manpower and skilling. Can't agree with you more. We hear about that in many other sectors at this event. And the third point you talked about was just complexity. And I remember a phrase where it's actually very complicated to make things simple. So
Exactly.
because you either have to mask things, or something somewhere has to take a call on what info to display, and the setup stage itself is one of the hardest. Once things are up and running, then it actually gets simpler. You can start to ignore certain things, even because your bang for buck isn't there. I'm not going to optimize my house or factory down to the last decimal place. My bang for buck is going to come pretty easily 80/20. So, with that sort of a frame, Viraj, since you deal with the CNI aspect, and there are people, I agree, Gaurav, we need to get prices down. But part of me likes to think, and maybe Viraj can tell me, that the prices are actually already low enough for a bunch of users and a bunch of use cases. Obviously, they're not there for everyone yet, and there's still more work to be done. So maybe, Viraj, you request you to share your opening thoughts, and if you have any thoughts on what's already real as opposed to science fiction, or
Sure,
in the future or in the long run.
sure. Yeah, thank you, Rahul. So first, it's a pleasure and it's an honor to be on this panel. Thank you. This is it's a very challenging use case because with my experience, I've learned that technology and digital, it's easy or it's possible to develop, put enough brain power behind a problem, and it's very likely that we'll be able to find a solution. But to deploy it to get consumer acceptance, that's where the big challenge lies. So for example, in the Indian energy consumers, first uninterrupted electric supply, reduced cost of energy, and then also the ability to obtain energy efficient assets. The next time I want to go buy a water heater, I want an energy efficient one. Is it available? Is it not? Then also some pre-work is required to understand the size of the problem in the Indian context. So for example, which assets are we targeting? Is it air conditioning, lighting, electric water heaters? Or how about the defrost cycle of refrigerators? Most of today's frost-free refrigeration equipment, they have a defrost cycle, which also I think consumes 500 or 1,000 watts. And so uh, uh, can we control that better? Also, some interesting work may be required, that to quantify like what are the non-transmission electric losses in the country. So with this, some pre-work is required to understand the size of the use case, and then with this will also give us some idea of where to focus. Then also some policy related work is required. So for example, time of day pricing. Uh, is the cost between using an appliance on peak or off peak incentive enough for someone to follow time of day pricing? And then also, how are they going to follow it? Do they need to go manually turn the geyser on and off and so on? There is another interesting use case which is related to time of day pricing, which is load curtailment for about 10 minutes. So suppose we have a smart meter that's communicating to and from the electric supply. There are periods when the electric grid, for whatever reason, is under stress. Typically, these last for about 5 minutes, 10 minutes. So, for this short period of 5 minute or 10 minute, curtail the non essential loads and reduce the stress on the grid, prevent the chance of a brownout. So, for example, for 5 or 10 minutes, I can delay my electric water heater perhaps for 5 or 10 minutes. The refrigerator defrost cycle can also be delayed. And then again, some more um, uh, mathematics is required to understand what is the benefit from implementing such load curtailment versus developing more efficient assets and machines. So to understand, again, all this is again to understand where to spend our efforts. The technology very likely exists, where to apply it. And then also the cost of the smart metering infrastructure. Who's going to pay for that? Is it the end customer? Then will they get the benefit from that cost? Or is it the utility company? Because often, like load curtailment may benefit the utility company a lot more than the end customer. So, but I'm not sure, but I think in yesterday's budget, smart meters are likely to get price reductions. So let's see where that takes us. Um, and then, I mean, there are all the other issues of, consumer privacy, non-intrusive electric load segregation, home energy dashboards, mobile apps, and so on. But as a path forward, can we integrate with the smart city initiative in the country just now? So can we target those customers first, the ones because since they're already the smart city initiative is underway, can we piggyback on that? Yeah. Thank you, Rahul.
Thank you, Viraj. Uh, I think you flagged a very interesting point, which is what you do depends on the classification of what types of load they are. So just understanding what's essential, not essential,
Right.
what's
Right.
deferrable, non-deferrable,
Right.
and linked to that is what is the technique for changing something. So let's assume whether it was geyser or AC or in a factory, you've got certain processes. Is it
Right.
manual? Is it semi-automated? Is it something with a digital control point like a thermostat set point, which is
Right.
then easier to integrate? There's so many questions where all the
Right.
ingredients exist. It's just
Right.
that last interconnection. So maybe I
Right.
need just an infrared blaster. So on a
Right.
most ACs now are split units in India with a
Right.
remote
Right.
capability. So
Right.
infrared blaster, is that the technology needed? Assuming it's not a smart AC, hypothetically. Obviously,
Right.
in centralized systems, you can run a BMS, building management system, more easily. Um,
Right. Right.
I'm sure Umesh may talk about BMS and some industrial applications in a bit. But before I switch over to you, Umesh, if I could request Professor Garg to share some brief opening remarks.
Thank you, Rahul. I'll try to be keep it within a couple of minutes. So, what I'm going to talk about a couple of points is basically based on our current research on residential energy demand reduction, and we are developing smart home energy management system, which we'll be trying doing the trials in 200 homes to see how effective can be smart home energy management system in reducing energy consumption as well as reducing the demand and shifting it. So far, based on the surveys and interactions, what we have seen, uh, technology and especially digitization can take us so far. Most important thing that we should consider is the human aspect. The human behavior is a critical component in all this technology landscape, where how the person behaves and what they want. If even if you put the best of the systems in place, and if the person doesn't want that, they will figure out how to overcome that, right? And so there's so many things that people have observed. People have observed rebound effect. People have observed that the novelty of such systems die over time. People stop seeing the feedback and stop implementing them. And what has also been reported is messaging is very important. How the message has been conveyed to the end user. If it is too customized and too personal, then also people don't like it. People think that, oh, somebody is watching me. If it is too impersonal, then they don't see that, right? So it's very critical balance that has to be created, considering the human behavior. And when it comes to the cost, my feeling is that to overcome all these issues, right, the cost, interoperability, management, installation, and analytics, I think, at least from the home's point of view, I think the smart home should not be a capital investment, but it should be a service. So people who are into entertainment, you started with that you showed a speaker. So companies which are in entertainment, which are in internet, like providing internet, providing television services, telephony services, they have access to so many customers, and they can start providing smart home as a service. So many of these problems can be taken care. So I'll stop here, and then of course we can deliberate more. Thank you. Rahul, I guess you're on mute. Not able to
Sorry,
hear you.
thank you. No, the human aspect is critical because there should be a buy-in, ability, incentive, all of the above. You can do it, you want to do it, and you're able to do it. So all of those are critical. Gaurav talked about the manpower issue just in terms of skills. I'll just mention a joke. Someone once said, "My system is so simple, it's idiot proof." And I said, "Oh, I'm sorry, they'll just build a better idiot." So nothing is perfect forever, even if it starts perfect. Umesh, over to you, please.
Thank you. Firstly, obviously, thanks to AEEE, and it's a pleasure to be part of this panel discussion. And Rahul, unexpectedly, I'm going to stay away from technology. Uh, so the couple of points that I have is I think most of the transformation that's happened across industries, if we look at, has
Could
happened
you
as a
bring the
result
mic
of.
a little closer? Sorry, just yeah,
Can
yeah,
you hear me now? Yeah.
much better. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. So I was saying is that most of the transformations that have happened as a result of some watershed moments. You look at the adoption of digital payments in India, good or bad, but happened as outcome of demonetization, and at the same point in time. So I think yesterday was one such watershed moment where I think in the budget they have introduced this concept of electricity portability, similar to that of mobile number portability. Obviously, we'll have to see how it pans out, but the point that I'm really trying to stress upon is that there's very little policy can do until unless you have a sort of a high end vision of what you want to do. What we've seen in mobile world in telecom, you've had since July 8 million per month numbers being ported. Telecom companies starting enterprise services because they realize that they cannot just get customers anymore only on the basis of how much they charge them for calls or data. There has to be additional value going around, and I think that's one point. So I think that's already happened. And speaking from the perspective of commercial and industrial customers, I think our tailwinds and headwinds are all in order. ESG, you look at the cost reduction pressures because of all the transformation that's happening and the challenges that have been there. So I think we have everything in place to be optimistically looking at higher adoption of digital technologies. But the only thing that we must take care of is the fact that look at asking this question, which Jeff Bezos actually does very well. He says that before you do something, just ask yourself what's not going to change in 10 years versus asking what's going to change in 10 years. And that will give us a lot of answers and around behavior and everything that we've spoken about. All our implementations start with technology, end with technology. Hardly do we ask this question. And I'm glad Mr. Vishal sir said that anything should be as a service. So just alluding to it, if I'm an energy retailer and I give you a service and say you would have 25%, 30% lesser bills versus what you're having, but you'll have to put this box in. I don't care what box is it, how does it manage. I've subscribed to the end outcome, which is to reduce my cost. So end outcomes have always to be thought of, and I don't think we think of end outcomes, when we talk about technology. And yeah, so I think that's my opening remark. I'm very optimistic in what's going to happen in India over the next 2 3 years. We have headwinds, tailwinds, everything in favor in that sense.
Thank you. I like this framing that it's the outcomes that drive it, because you've seen this even in the government. For example, they no longer have their own drivers, they outsource taxi fleets. So you see yellow plates being used a lot. And that's true in many facets, not just in the government, but even in the private sector. Even consumers nowadays are sort of offloading certain things to third parties. That's the whole shift. But now I'm going to push back, and now we're going to open it up to these. I'm going to combine, in the interests of time, all the segments because they're all interrelated, quite frankly, and just continue where we left off, which is we're in agreement on a lot of things, what's missing and where we need to go, I think. Now, the devil is in the details. So, coming back to two things that were said. One was, let's imagine we want it as a service. So who do I go to? What do I give up? In the sense, do you really think a Schneider is going to bother going into my grandmother's house? Because, she's got limited load, limited capabilities of shifting her load, etc. She's not about to necessarily get a smart AC or a smart fridge, forget a smart geyser in the near future. So, is this retrofits? Is it just gradual evolution that you'll get more and more smarter products over time? How will that interface and solutions come out? Because whenever you say as a service, I think it fits much better with C and I than it does with residential. Vishal.
Yeah, Rahul. So, very interesting point that you have brought in. I think we have to leverage entertainment as a basic service and then ride on all these other things on top of it. So I am willing to pay 1 lakh rupees for a smart TV, but I'm not willing to pay 10,000 rupees for a smart device which can save me a few thousand rupees a year, right? So the problem is the entertainment and security. People are willing to pay much more and they perceive much more value out of it. Now, the thing is that once you have these smart entertainment or security or these smart speakers in place, then half of the hurdle is over. You have internet, you have connectivity, you have a processor which can act as a gateway. Now it's a matter of building the network, adding few things at a time, and which can help us from the energy point of view. So I would say that it will not be, in my opinion, building automation or energy company which will get into this. It will be the entertainment companies which should expand their scope and start adding these extra features. So they already have the customer. They have already spent money to reach the grandmother, right, for the entertainment. And now they can start adding slowly one value at a time. So that is what I think would be a good approach.
Gaurav?
Sure. Um, a very interesting take on it, Vishal sir. I have a slightly different experience on this. Uh, so we work with a couple of utilities in Singapore and also in India, and we're working. Some projects have been deployed, and others are still at the pilot stage. And you're right, Rahul. It does take root faster in the CNI segment and probably take a little bit more time in the residential segment, but particularly in the CNI segment, um, there's three things required to make the party go round. There's the need, which is clearly there amongst the consumers. There are the technology solutions. Equally clearly, those are available. The one thing that's lacking is the money. And those customers who can afford it do go in for it, but the vast majority don't. And everything as a service, and we've seen it happening in the world of software, is the way to go. So how do we make it go? And the answer is really to tap the right kind of climate funds. And we've spent a significant amount of time talking to them and engaging with them. And now we're fortunate in that two, three of them are have made available lines of credit so that projects can be deployed, and 5 year, 7 year kind of periods. So the way to go is really to tap the right kind of organizations. There are funds which are available. It's just a question of aligning interests and getting them to the table. And once we're able to move this from being a trickle to possibly a small torrent, then it'll acquire a life of its own and it'll become ubiquitous. So I think there are some early signs there, but this clearly is the way to go. Of course, if we can make entertainment and intertwine it with that, that will happen much faster.
Viraj, before I turn to you, just one second. Um, I agree that, I mean, CNI has obviously, there's more money, they're larger, they have more devices, more potential. But part of me thinks that preparedness, this is the dual of manpower skilling, it's also institutional or enterprise skilling. So you have entities that don't even know their energy demand, they don't have a CIO or a CISO. A lot of entities who have technology to some extent, they're not technology companies, they're engineering firms, they're utilities like electricity companies. So just getting the homework right so that I can understand what is the scope, What do I do? Where are the hooks that I can then put in new hardware? It's not just about the sense. So it's sense, think, act. All of them is where we need space. So am I sort of too pessimistic in just saying that our enterprises are behind their global peers in just deployment of IT, ISOs, etc.? Viraj.
Yeah, I have a interest in, or I believe we should go after the bigger customers. So, because for example, in the Indian consumer, individual homes, residences, that's according to me a real challenge because, for example, these the smart devices. I can connect Amazon to a smart plug and so on and get some level of home automation. Someone like me, I've been resisting to buy that because I see that as a hobby. I don't see that as a need just now. So, for that reason, I think we should go after, the big home associations, and like for example in Bangalore, the large like the Adarsh, Prestige, those kind of builder homes, because there it's okay. It's easier to encourage acceptance of such technologies, and also things like the real estate investment trusts who manage large buildings and so on, because with that size there may be enough of an incentive to get them to accept such technologies. But then the other side of the picture is that okay, we can get, but is the other side ready to accept this technology? So the consumer, let's say they have a smart meter and they have all the other technology. Is the utility company ready to accept this technology at the moment? So and what can we do to hasten that, to hurry that up? Yeah.
Absolutely. Umesh, did you want to come in on this before I move on?
Yeah, maybe just one point. There's a concept called jobs to be done, which was made very popular by Professor Clayton Christensen. He's not with us anymore. He from Harvard. So he basically spoke about three
Umesh,
aspects
could I
of.
ask you to bring the mic? Just carry it closer. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So basically, when I want to just take a step back and connect again to a concept called jobs to be done, which was popularized by Professor Clayton Christensen from Harvard. Uh, and basically, it says there are three reasons why people buy or do what they do. It has an emotional angle, it has a social angle, and it has a functional angle. All our discussions are around functional. And I'll just take one example again. Is look at Tata Nano. Was it a bad idea to take a car out at one sub 1 lakh rupees? No, it wasn't. Did it not do the job functionally? It did. But where did it go wrong? Socially, no one wanted to take a Tata Nano out and take it out into and because of what people would say, right? Not that it did not do a good job as a car. So again, when you all I'm trying to say is that before we decide, and I don't think we are, as either a technology or stakeholders, we are the right people to only decide what's going to happen, whether we should target CNI or residential, because for both there'll be different stakeholders who would have more value at stake. So maybe telecom players more likely to do residential, and non-telecom utilities or other companies more likely to do commercial and industrial in that sense. So one has to again go back and look at what's needed versus or what is that they want. So one last point, we are doing low cost homes for a lot of people, right? Now for them, saving $100 on electricity makes a lot of sense. Why not do that service there as a part of put it into place with those schemes itself, because that matters to you. Now most of the people who live in urban area, to be very fair, it might sound weird, but no one cares about electricity bills, to be very fair. Most people don't. You might want to spend your lifetime trying to change that behavior. Good luck. Is all that's going to happen. Good luck. That's never going to happen. If it has not happened as of now, we've seen the worst of energy crisis, oil crisis, petrol prices crisis. Still, the behavior hasn't changed, which clearly means we are missing out. You still find people buying SUVs, right? But there are some people who are making decisions on buying electric vehicles, even though the cost is not that low. There are subsidies and everything available. So I think if uh, long story short, just to maybe if I'm saying there is opportune time, but we just have to be spending more time, and entrepreneurs or businesses would see it. One way last, I see very little road of policy in over here. To be very fair, in that sense, policy has done what it had to do. It has brought the smart meters mandated. Mandates hardly work. We have seen it in multiple schemes. So yeah, I think it's just a question of some entrepreneur or the other, or group of entrepreneurs picking up that as an opportunity. And when I say entrepreneurs, I don't essentially only mean startups, enterprises or incumbents included.
So
Um,
I'll slightly disagree just on policies done, because time of day pricing, for example, is something that is a policy need that is missing, that would enable storage, that would enable people wanting to shift. But again, your larger point, I agree with. We're short of time, so I want to start moving to a few questions of the audience, bring them in. So this idea that Vishal, you pointed out, of course, the TV we're willing to spend. Viraj, you raised a good point that you've got builders. So this agency effect or split incentive problem can be avoided. So I think we can look for consortia as a model, niches as a model. In the audience questions, there was something about there's a platform coming together called Matter. So things like this where you could have consortia. I think apartment complexes are also very important because they standardize a bunch of stuff for 50 to 500 apartments at one shot. They give you decent volume, they give you concentrated load at a feeder level, so avoiding diesel generator because they will have diesel backup in many cases. I think there are standardized niches that could be low hanging fruit. In the next couple of years we should see immense growth in all of these, because when flats sell for 50 lakh to 3 crore, depending on where you are and what it includes, 5-10,000 rupees extra for this smartness is embedded. It's noise. It's not going to be the energy per se. It's going to be either worry about carbon, worry about interest in something new, or convenience. So it's a combination of all of the above that really needs to align. The there was a question from the audience. I think that's the last one we have time for. Maybe Gaurav or Vishal, how do we really up the skilling? Because you have Indian experts doing this worldwide, including in the Middle East, which is at the operational level. You see it at the global level in tech companies. It's not happening in India. Is that just a matter of time, or what? How do we kickstart that?
Okay, I'll take a quick stab at it, and then maybe Vishal sir could take a look at it. So, number one, um, they're simply not paid enough. That is the single biggest problem that there is. How do we fix that? We need to train them up to work with modern technologies so that they're able to handle modern equipment which are getting deployed. Uh, the change should be tangible in terms of, they should be KPI'd on the savings they generate, on the number of tickets and how they can reduce it, and these are all possible. There will be um, uh, a natural tailwind that will happen because the facility today is seeing a larger chunk of an organization spend as compared to IT a few years ago. But IT now, a lot of it is getting outsourced. So one is seeing facilities starting to become the new IT. So facility persons will get a natural uplift. We have to make sure that they get these kinds of upskilling done, and there are various organizations like IFMA and a bunch of others, and they have an enormous role to play in upskilling them. As soon as we can ensure that proper standardized certification is done, and there is something like the Cisco certified engineer, if we can create something similar to that in the FM space, it'll go a long way towards ensuring that more and more people go in for these and are able to drive a change.
And Manish pointed out that there's also new employment opportunities. It's not just a need side, but it's a supply side change possible. So since we're beyond our time, I'll just, before giving the final word to anyone with burning points to share, the poll question talked about smart appliances and devices, and it was a small sample size. With small n, you shouldn't read too much into it. But smart AC and smart fridge were said to be the most important from an Indian perspective, less so smart two-wheeler or smart car. And which one they anticipated getting first? The majority of the audience were looking to buy a smart fridge or a smart car before other appliances. So I think smart car is really key because it's a huge energy consumer. So things like what time do I plug it in, or what time does it charge, is enormously important for the grid, for emissions, etc. So I think we need technology that makes it effortless, that either your car has the smarts, but you guide your car. I don't trust my car, with all due respect. I want it to listen to me. And so we still have a little bit of ways to go before there are ubiquitous apps that can do it for us just by pressing a few buttons on our phone. So with that, any final closing thoughts, because we just have 30 seconds left? Any burning insights for the audience to excite them, as opposed to, I mean, we're all realists. That is why we're not, I mean, I want to thank everyone for not just trying to be salesperson for something we all believe in, we know will happen, but at the same time, we're pragmatists. So any closing thoughts, Vishal?
Just one quick thing. Smart home, the IT part is not the design time intervention. This is the operation time intervention. So we can put all the devices at the beginning of the home, but it might not be smart. So any regulation, any policy should not look at the beginning, but should look at the continuity. So smart home has to be continuously operational and not just static.
A very good point. This is a not just a moving target, but it's something that's in operations. So to use the analogy, you're trying to change the wheels on a car moving at 100 kilometers an hour. It's not easy. Yeah. So if there are no other sort of burning, I think time was short to continue the discussions, but I'll hand it over to our colleagues at AEEE.
Thank you so much, Rahul, and thank you everyone for joining Executive Dialogue 4. It's been an incredible discussion. Thank you so much. With this, we'll come to the end of the session, but we would like to thank our platinum sponsor, Danfoss, gold sponsor, Tabreed, silver sponsors, Saint-Gobain, and Smart Jewels for helping us make this event successful. We'd also like to thank our networking and outreach partners, Griha, Ishre, Rama, and the India Smart Grid Forum. I would also like to inform all our delegates and speakers that they can engage with the development of feed on the forum on Twitter and LinkedIn with the details in our ticker. We will now have a special address on how to de-risk energy efficient investment in the world of uncertainties between 12:40 to 1:10 with Eric. Please dial in to that particular session by going back into the auditorium via your platform lobby area. And thank you so much. It's been a pleasure having you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.